right. Thank you guys so much for coming. Excited to jump into this stuff with you guys. So today we're going to talk about HTML, and we're going to focus on the basics so you guys can kind of get a sense for what it is and how to take advantage of it. I'll just start with a quick background of myself, just so you guys know who I am and what I'm about, and hopefully give me a little bit of credibility to talk about this. So my name is Will Phillips. I was born in New Orleans. I grew up in Memphis. I live here in Oklahoma now. I am a web designer and front-end developer, which just means I do a lot of the visual design of websites and applications, and then I build them out into working things. I've done this for over 10 years now. Don't let the baby face fool you. And I've had a lot of fun doing it. Done all manner of things. I've freelanced. I've worked for agencies, with agencies. Worked at a couple of startups now. So that's just a little quick on my background there. But like I said, we're going to cover the basics of HTML today. Just real quick, and don't answer, but how many of you know what HTML means? What do those letters stand for? Okay, you guys know? Okay, so the rest of you, just for fun, let's just make sentences out of these letters. What do you think? I thought it could say like how to make links, but that's not what it stands for. You guys have, my wife thought it meant hot toddies make life. You guys have any guesses?
Highly translated mutable language.
Ooh, fancy. Okay, highly translated mutable language. I have a feeling this is really might be too basic for you. You guys have any guesses? No? All right, that's okay. We'll find out what the meaning here is in a second. So I'm going to take you back a little bit to before AOL, before Netscape Navigator and Mosaic, and we're going to just briefly cover a little bit of the history of HTML. So way back during the Cold War, you might have heard of ARPA, the Advanced Research Projects Administration, I think. Anyway, they were developing all these things to try to stay ahead of the Russians and stuff. And so scientists, as they were developing all these technologies, said, you know, we need a way to be able to like quickly collaborate on these projects and to share information and documents and things like that. And so they started building these self-contained networks that they could do that in. And so later, a certain scientist coined the term hypertext, which was this concept of like, well, what if we could like link these documents together, and where you could click something and then pull up that document within another document and go around. And so all these things started evolving over time. The internet was originally kind of used just by scientists so that they could collaborate on these things. And then later in the early 90s, a man named Tim Berners-Lee came along, and he built this program called the World Wide Web. So interesting, the World Wide Web is not the same as the internet. But this is a screenshot of an early version of that, where he would make these documents here, and like you can see in the upper right-hand corner, he had like his little navigation where you could go back and forward between pages, and you could define these links. And so he kind of furthered that whole concept of that hypertext and being able to link between documents, and he called that HTML. And so that stands for hypertext markup language. So that's what the HTML stands for, hypertext markup language. And as Jeremy Keith in a List Apart article wrote, HTML is the unifying language of the World Wide Web. Using just the simple tags it contains, the human race has created an astoundingly diverse network of hyperlinked documents, from Amazon, eBay, and Wikipedia, to personal blogs and websites dedicated to cats that look like Hitler. Gotta love the internet. So Tim Berners-Lee put this out there, and it started being used by scientists. He worked at CERN, which is in Europe. It's a big scientific research place there. And people started adopting this. So fast forward a little bit, as this started becoming more widely adopted and used beyond by just scientists, some standards groups were born. The W3C and the WHATWG, which is, I forget, it's something hypertext language working group. And these two standards organizations work on defining what these tags in this language are and like what they do, kind of the spec for like, this is HTML. And they've developed that over time until now they are on the 5th working spec of this, commonly known as HTML5. And so that's what's widely being used today, is kind of the 5th working version of this language. So some pretty basic stuff. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So now let's kind of like dive into how this language works a little bit here. So as mentioned in Jeremy Keith's quote there, HTML is made up of tags. Well, what are tags? Well, a tag is kind of a container element for whatever goes inside of it. So let's take an example tag here. We have this P tag. Every tag starts with an opening bracket, a character or a word that tells it what kind of tag it is. So like in this case, this P tag is a common paragraph tag, which we'll use those in a little bit, and then a closing right angle bracket. So that's the start of a tag. And then after that, you put whatever you want inside of it, and then you'll have a closing tag, which is usually the same thing, but with a little trailing slash inside of it. And so that's the structure of how most of the tags within HTML work. You'll have an opening tag, some stuff in between it, not always, and then a closing tag. And then in some cases, you'll have these tags which don't need a closing tag, like an image tag, for instance, and they're self-closing tags. They'll have kind of that trailing slash inside of them. So that's most of HTML follows that format. They have opening and closing tags and then everything in between. And so we'll see how that basic structure is something we can use to build out entire web pages. So going a little bit further, you also have attributes that you can add to these tags that tell it even more. So let's take that P tag that we were looking at a minute ago. And so we can add an attribute. And the way that works is you define an attribute name, and then you set an equal sign, and then in quotations, you put the value for that attribute. So how does that work? Well, let's again take this paragraph tag example. And here's a lang attribute, which we'll get into more details about the different kinds of attributes and stuff later. But so in this case, we set the attribute name of lang, which tells a browser, like, well, what language is this? And then in the quotations, we put en-us, which tells it that this is the English US language. And so that's an attribute that we can add to a tag that tells a web browser more about how to read this tag and what it is, how to render it, things like that. And a tag can have multiple attributes on it. So you could add language and you can add other things on it as well. So am I moving too fast? Is that okay for everybody so far? Okay. So those are basic tags. You may have already known that. Sorry if so. But it's good to cover. So with those tags, we can begin to build out actual web pages. So let's talk a little bit about the structure of how that works. So here's just a basic bare bones web page with different tags in it. There's nothing in it yet. We're just looking at the tags here. So let's talk about what the different parts of a web page are. So you've got this whole document here. At the very type is what's called a doc type. So this is a lot simpler than it used to be before. When we had these different working specs of HTML, you had to add all these attributes that told it what kind of HTML it was, what language it was, which version of that language, all these different things. And with HTML5, they've reduced that to just this little bit right here. And so what that tells a browser, something reading this code, that, hey, okay, this is HTML and it's this kind of HTML. So you always define that at the top of your document before anything else. And that's just with exclamation point, doc type, all caps, just like it is there, and then HTML. And there's no need to put a closing tag on that. It's just kind of a singular element. And then after that, we've got our two HTML tags. So there will always be an opening and a closing one of that. And what that basically tells the browser when it's reading through this code or any machine or whatever, okay, HTML starts here at the opening tag, and then it'll read everything inside until you get to the closing tag, and then it knows, okay, that's the end of that HTML. And then inside of that, you're going to have a head. And that'll usually contain information about the page. There's usually nothing in there that gets rendered in a web browser. So you'd put things like the title of a page, meta information, things that show up in like the Google searches and stuff like that is usually where things go there in the head. And then you have your body tags. And so the body, you have an opening and closing there, which similar to HTML, tells the browser, so the browser knows where it starts and ends. And usually everything inside of the body is what shows up in a web page. So if you add text in here, you add pictures, a video, whatever, throw that in the body, that's what gets loaded into a web page. So like, for example, here, if I threw one of those little P tags with some text, that would show up in the web page. So that's a breakdown of kind of a basic structure of an HTML page. So you've got the doc type, you've got your HTML, your head, and your body. All right. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So let's code like Kip. And I thought we'd have some fun and actually build a web page together today. So is everybody on the Wi-Fi already? You're not on the Wi-Fi? Can we get her the Wi-Fi password? Okay. So while she's doing that, if you guys would go to this link and just kind of have it up in a tab, and that'll have just a couple of links we'll need to copy and paste that we'll use to kind of build out a web page. Sure. That is d.pr/n as in Nancy / and these are all capital, S as in Sam, the number 1, G, E, S as in Sam, and R. Okay. What's that?
Are they going to go to the website? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. Sorry. Is it not working for you? Are you guys getting it? You getting a 404? Uh-oh. Okay, let me double check this here then.
Yeah, so everything again is uppercase except for the L.
Now, wait, is that an L? I told you it was a 1. Okay, that's a lowercase L, my bad. I promise you I know how to read code. Did that work? Okay.
If you are in Slack, everything is close to
Okay, y'all got it? Got it? Good? Okay. All right, so I'm going to break out of the slides here for a minute, and we're going to actually get into some stuff. So the first thing I want to talk about is, this is what you should see at that link, by the way. Oh, wait. How do I mirror my screen? That's okay, I can like drag it over. Arrangement, mirror, bam. Okay, how about that? You can see that? Okay, so this is what you should see at that link. So first thing we'll talk about is code editors. Does everybody here have like a text editor or already have a code editor they like to use? Because if not, I'll go ahead and cover that, which we should anyway. Yeah. So most people like to use kind of a basic text editor to write HTML. I like Sublime. It's just a basic code editor. It's pretty simple. It is free. You can pay for it if you want it to stop asking you to pay for it. There's some others out there as well called, let me just kind of go to these links here. So Sublime is one I like to use and what we're going to get into today. So again, you can follow that link to it. Atom is another code editor that's become really popular. And then there's one by Microsoft called Visual Studio Code that has also become really, really popular today. It's actually really powerful. A lot of the features of these code editors we're not going to get into today, but if you keep coming back to Free Code Camp, you'll figure out how to use all that stuff. But if you don't already, let's go ahead and download Sublime and get that installed in your computer. So just click the download button here. And if you need any help getting that downloaded and installed, let me know. It shouldn't take too long. And I'll wait for everybody to get there. Yes. Yes, if you have troubles, raise your hand. Somebody will help.
Someone on Twitch mentioned WebStorm.
Yes, WebStorm is another one that you can use. Thank you, whoever that was. This is another one you can use as well. I mean, it's a matter of preference. I've used Sublime for a long time, so I'm comfortable with it. But feel free to try all of these out and see what you like. So,
Do we need the most recent version of Sublime?
yeah, the most recent is fine. Yeah. He asked if the most recent version was fine, and the answer is yes. Okay. And once you get that downloaded, just go ahead and open it up and just leave it open for a minute. And actually, while you're doing that, if you guys want to go ahead and create a folder on your desktop, this is where we're going to be writing some HTML at. And just name it whatever you want. And we'll save some files into there in a second. All right, who's still waiting to get Sublime or a text editor? Everybody? I'm just going to walk around real quick and make sure everybody's getting it okay. All right, I think we got everybody up now, so let's start writing some HTML. Okay, so if you haven't already, create a folder on your desktop if you can. And if you've got Sublime open, you probably already have like a blank document open. Go ahead and save that into the folder you made and just name it index.html. And I'm going to go ahead and do that here so we can all follow along. So I've got a blank document here. I can type some stuff in it. And I'm just going to save this onto my desktop into that folder I made. And I'm going to name it index.html. Another little thing to kind of take notice of here, most of like the root or like kind of the home page of websites are named index.html. So something to keep in mind when you start building out multiple pages and do more things later. So go ahead and save that. And let's just type something in the page here and see what happens. So I'm gonna make this a lot larger here so you guys can see it better. So let's just type something here. Hello, Dave. And let's save that when you've got that in there. And then go into that file you made. And you'll already see this when it loads in there, but just double click that file and it should open it up in your browser and you'll see those words in your browser. Hello, Dave. Look at that. You got something showing up. So let's do a little bit more here. Let's go back to Sublime and let's start building out that structure of our web page that I talked about. So the first thing we do is do that little opening bracket, and we need to define our doc type like we talked about. And so that's exclamation point, and then in all caps, DOCTYPE, doc type. And then we're going to set that to HTML, and then our closing bracket. So that's the doc type of our document. Then below that, we want to write our opening HTML tag. And hit enter a few times, and then we're going to add our closing HTML tag like that. So you guys should have that now. Then inside of our HTML tags, we're going to add the head and the body. So go ahead and add that opening head tag, closing head tag, and then an opening and closing body tag. So I'm going to add that here. There's my closing head. And then, opening body tag, and then a closing body tag. All right, so we've got our doc type, we've got our opening and closing HTML tags, we've got our head and our body. So again, let's just put some words back in here again and see what happens. Just put hello, Dave, and then save that. And then if you go back to your browser, same thing. Nothing's changed, but I'm going to show you something cool here that you can look at. And this is going to be true for any web page. You may already know this, but excuse me. So remember, we just wrote a bunch of extra tags in that file, but only hello Dave is showing up here. So like I said, only the stuff in the body is going to appear in the page. So in most modern web browsers, they provide a way to view that HTML if you wanted to. So there's a couple ways to do it. I think in Firefox, actually I don't remember where it is. A lot of times if you right click, you'll see view page source or something similar. And if I click that, it's going to open it up in a new tab and it's going to show me all the HTML for this page. I'm going to increase that a little bit there so everybody can see that. And you can do this on any web page. For example, if I go to alistapart.com, let's see, let me just go to one of their recent articles. So if I click on this web page here and I click view page source, we can see all of the HTML code for this web page. And this is also a really great way to learn, is like if you see some other cool web page and you're like, oh, what did they use to build that? You can just view the source and see all the HTML tags they wrote. So if you look here, they got their doc type up here, they've got their head, and they've got all this stuff in here, this meta information and all this other stuff inside the head. And then they've got their opening body tag here, and you'll notice they've got a bunch of attributes on this tag. Then they got all this stuff inside the body here. And then if I go all the way down, then they've got their closing body tag and their closing HTML tag. So you can do this to view any code online out there, which is pretty cool. It's like looking under the hood for all this stuff. So let's go back and start adding some HTML tags. So within the head, we're going to add a tag that's going to set the title of the page. And this isn't going to show up in the web page, but any like search engines or browsers coming along, they're going to see this inside the head and know, okay, this is the actual title of this page. So we're going to do that by writing a title tag. So opening and closing angle brackets like that. Again, we're inside the head. And then we'll write a closing tag. And inside of that, we're going to write this title. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. One of my favorite books. So once you've got that, save it. And then if you go back, I'll leave it up for a minute if you'll need to look at it. So once you've got that saved, if you go back to the browser, so first of all, you'll notice up here in the tab bar, it's just got the path to our file on our computer. Now, if I refresh that, look what happens. It pulls in the title of that page into the tab bar, which is kind of cool. So that's the way to change that if you're ever working on a web page and you need to do that. And then, of course, a lot of search engines like Google, Bing, et cetera, they'll usually grab that title out of the head section of a document like that. And when you see search results, that's where that comes from, typically, is the title of the page. So we've set the title of our page, and we've got that in our head. So let's start writing some stuff in the body now. So let's start out with some basic text elements. So again, HTML is a very structured language. That's the point of it, to be able to share information in a structured, consistent way. And so there, it includes a lot of text elements that are structured that way. So you think about like a newspaper article when you're writing a Word document. You'll have things like you'll have the title, and then maybe you'll have a couple of subtitles, and then you'll have the body of that article, like the paragraph and stuff. HTML follows that similar kind of structure. So you will define headings in your code, and then text, and then other things, and it'll get rendered out that way in a web browser. So let's add, so we've got the title of our page kind of set in the head, but let's add it in a way that'll show up in the web page. So to add a heading, we'll add a H tag and then a number. And in HTML, you can add headings 1 through 6. So to do that, we'll open a new tag here, and we'll type H, and then you'll see all the options here. And then I'm going to do 1, which is the highest level heading. And I'm just going to copy and paste my title from up here, put it in here, and then I'm going to add a closing H1 tag. So save that, go back to your browser and refresh it, and you should see this big title show up in the page. So I've got that saved. I'm going to go over here. Wow. So remember that Hello Dave text was a lot smaller, just putting text into the web page, but by putting an H1, a heading tag around it, it displays a lot larger now, like a heading. So that's the title of our page. We've got that showing up now. Let's keep going. Let's add a P tag for paragraph. And let's add a byline. So we're going to put by Mark Twain. Crazy guy. Okay. So if I save that, go back and look at my browser, that paragraph text is a lot smaller because it's not a heading like that. So now we've got a title and who this is by. So now before I get into adding some text, maybe I want to add a picture at the top of this. How do I do that? So at that shortened URL I sent you, there I have a link to an image here that we can download. So let's go ahead and do that. I go to this here, brings me to this nice image of the Mississippi Bayou where Huck Finn was set. So go ahead and download this image and then drop it into that folder you created. And I'll show you how we're going to display this in the page. So I've got that downloaded. So I'm going to move this over to my folder. So I've got that here. So there's that image from Unsplash. Unsplash is kind of a free photo repository if you ever want to find some really beautiful free stock photos. All right, so let's go back over to our code after you've got that image downloaded. And I'm going to go down a couple lines here. Now, an image tag is IMG, not to be confused with OMG. So do your little opening bracket, IMG, that's your image tag. Now, I used this example earlier. An image tag doesn't need a closing tag. It's kind of a self-closing tag. So all I need to do is put a / and then my closing bracket, and there's my image element. So if you save this and go over to the browser and refresh your page, nothing shows up, okay? And some browsers will actually show like a little broken image, like it's a missing image, which is interesting too. So how do we get that image to show up here? Well, we're going to use attributes here that we talked about earlier. So to bring in an image file, we're going to add an attribute called source, where we're going to set the source of that image. So add src, that's the name of the attribute, equals, and then put two quotation marks. And this is going to be a relative path to this, and I'll explain this a little more in a little bit. But make sure that this image is in the same folder as your HTML file you made. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to copy the whole name of that image file. So copy that, then come back in your HTML file and paste that inside the quotation marks of the source attribute. So I'm going to paste that in there. Now if I hit save, and I go back over here and refresh the page, whoa, there's my image. But it's like really huge. So what can we do here? Well, there's another attribute we can add to the image tag, because remember, we can put multiple attributes on a tag, and that is width, which is pretty straightforward. So if I add width, the equal signs, and then two quotation marks, and inside of it I'm going to put a number. So width takes a number, and I'm just going to put 600. And HTML, if you just put the number, it reads that into pixels. So if I save that and come back over here, now it's a lot smaller. It looks a lot better. And what was your name? Chris? Okay. You might have trouble doing the relative stuff in CodePen, so I'll help you later if you want. So you can skip that part. Okay. All right. All right. So you should have this in your web page now. You've got your title, we've got a little byline, and we've got an image. Is everybody there? Okay. So let's keep going. Add some more stuff here. So let's, below the image, we're going to put our first chapter. So let's put a subheading and use an H2, which is a heading 2 tag. So I'm going to write, open up an H2 tag like that. I'm just going to write out chapter 1 and then put my closing H2 tag. So save that, go back to your browser and refresh. And now look, we've got another heading down here. And because I made it an H2 and not an H1, you'll notice that it's smaller than the title above. Do I need to wait for a minute? Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So now let's add some text into our document. So at that shortened link I gave you guys earlier, So I've got an excerpt here at this link. If you just click that, and that'll bring up the first chapter of Huckleberry Finn. So go ahead and just copy all this text out. It's not that much. So just copy all of this and then go back over to your HTML document. And just right after your H2 tag, just paste that right in here. So let me, bring this down a little bit so we can see more of it. All right, so now I've got all my text pasted in here. All right, that's pretty cool. Got multiple paragraphs in here. So let's save that and look at that in the browser and see what happens. So we'll go back over to my local index HTML, refresh the page. Bam, now we got all this text in there. Something doesn't look right. We don't have our paragraphs. What happened to that? Well, we need to go in and add those P tags, which is a paragraph tag, around all of our paragraphs. So if you pasted all the text in there, around each paragraph, go ahead and start adding those P tags. That might take a minute, so I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to do the same here. So I'm going to add to the opening. Make sure you have your opening and closing P tag or paragraph tag after each block of text there. All right, so I got one there. And I'm showing, as I go through this stuff, I'm showing you guys a lot of these really commonly used basic HTML tags that just make up most web pages, or most of the content in most web pages. All right, I think I've only got a couple left here. And one more. All right, so make sure you've got all your opening and closing P tags around your text. And then save that. Now when you come back and refresh the page, now we've got all these line breaks in here broken out into different paragraphs. I'll reduce this a little bit. Give them a minute to catch up.
Anybody else need help? We're good?
You following along okay, Chris? Oh. Yeah. See. Okay, so we're going to keep going for the sake of time. So I'm going to show you a couple more things, just a couple of more tags that are useful, and then a way to link between things. So there's a couple more tags you can do. Say you want to make some text bold or italic. So there's ways to do that. So in the second paragraph, or actually, you know what? Just choose whatever text you want. I'm not going to make you do that. But I'm going to come in here, and what I'm going to do is add. If I wanted to make text bold, I'm going to add a strong tag to make the text look strong. So I'm going to come in here and just pick some text, and I'm going to open. Do my little opening bracket. I'm going to type the word strong, and then where I want the text to end, I'm going to put my cursor there, and then add a closing strong tag. So can you all see where I did that there? I've got an opening strong and a closing strong around the text that I want to be bold. And then I'm just going to pick some other text somewhere. Actually, we can do this to the byline. Say I want to make the by Mark Twain italic. So around that, I'm going to add an EM for emphasis. So I'm going to put open tag there, EM, inside of my P tags. You can nest tags in HTML, by the way, like we're doing here. And then I'm going to put my closing EM tag. So now if I save that, and I go back to my file, you'll notice up here, by Mark Twain is now italicized, and then this text that I chose down here is now in bold. Might be able to make that a little bigger if I need to. So that's some ways we can actually modify the look of some of the text there. So suppose we want to add a link to somewhere. How do we do that? So let's take this text here in the very first paragraph of that text you copied. Let's take the words Tom Sawyer and let's link that somewhere that tells us about Tom Sawyer. So a link tag is actually an A tag. So if we want to create a link, that's an A tag. So I'm going to add those here around Tom Sawyer. I'm going to add an opening bracket there, write A, and then my little closing angle bracket. And then on the end of Sawyer, I'm going to close that with my slash, A, and then my closing bracket. So we'll put that around Tom Sawyer. So that's a link tag. So that tells a browser the text inside of these tags is a link. So if I save that and go back, nothing much happening yet. So it's a link, but how do we tell it where to link to? So in that, let me go back to that link that I sent you guys. I have a link here to a Wikipedia article about Tom Sawyer. So let's copy this URL to this Wikipedia article. And we're going to add an attribute to this A tag. And that attribute is called href. There's probably some history besides why that is href and not link, but that's for another time. So put href equals, and then quotation marks again, and then paste in that link we just copied to that Wikipedia article. So you see I've got my A, href, the URL, my end quotation mark, my end angle bracket, the words I want to be linked, and then I have my closing A tag. And again, that URL was in this little shared link here that I posted earlier. So if I go back to my web page, this index file we're working on now you'll notice that text is a different color and it's underlined. It's now a link. So this is that hypertext part of the markup language that we're learning here. So if I click this link now, it's going to take me to that page. That's kind of the whole premise of HTML, is to be able to link to other places. How to make links, right? Remember? Okay. I'm cheesy, guys. You should know. Okay. And so you know what? Let's see here. Yeah, that's most of the basics. We now have like this full page of HTML items we have. And if you kind of do that trick I showed you earlier where you go to view page source, here's all the HTML that we wrote out together. We've got our heading, we've got our page title up here in the head, we've got our body tags, we've got our images with some attributes on it, we've got our paragraphs, all that's here. This is a basic HTML page. All web pages are made up of these tags. Now there's a lot more advanced stuff we can do. We can maybe set the width of these paragraphs so they're not running all the way across the window. We can change the fonts, we can change colors, we can do all kind of stuff, but that's gonna have to be for another day. So I know that you guys next week are having a class on CSS. Oh, in 2 weeks, okay, 2 weeks. CSS is a language that you can like write all this stuff to basically change how everything looks. But what we've learned today, we've gone through all these, the structure of a page, all these different tags, this is basically the skeleton of every web page out there, or most web pages out there. I mean, this is pretty fundamental stuff. So you guys have like done really well in keeping up. I hope I didn't go too fast. Are there any questions before I stop about anything we covered today? I'm not that good, come on. Okay, all right. Yes, you can also post questions in Slack. So I will end with this. Oh, did you have a question?
Yeah, I kind of missed, when you closed that last one with the hyperlink, it was basically just the bracket with the A and E traffic animation.
Typically the, okay, so her question was, when you close a tag, do you have to include all the attributes in the closing tag too?
The A traffic part, yeah.
Yes, like the href, yeah. So in the A tag, in the opening tag, you had the href. I'm just repeating this for the video. You have the href that we set where the link to, and then we had a closing tag. In the closing tag, you do not have to include the attributes. You just need to close it. So in that particular instance, it was just a closing A. Yeah. So if you guys want to learn more stuff, check out these links. w3schools.com has like basically all the HTML tags out there. There's a lot more we didn't cover that you can do, like HTML forms, lists, how to embed videos. There's all kind of things, a lot more things you can do with HTML. Today was just to get you like understanding the basics so that you can have a foundation to learn more about it. There's a fun video by a designer girl named Jessica Hish, don'tfeartheinternet.com. She has a fun, quirky little video there that can help you a little bit more. Mozilla actually is a really great resource. They're the makers of the browser Firefox. So check out their stuff on HTML. They have a lot of tutorials and stuff there too. And of course, Free Code Camp. So that's all I got for today. Thank you guys for listening to me and putting up with me for today. I hope you got something good out of it and set you up for learning a whole lot more. So thank you to the Free Code Camp team for having me, and that's it for me.